Welcome to the second season of Straits Talk, a podcast where we talk about the values, risks, and constraints of data protection and governance in generative AI. With me today are Kevin Shepherdson, founder and CEO of Straits Interactive, and Elvin To, co-founder of Straits Interact. I am Grace Chung, a tech writer. You know, when I buy things from Amazon, despite the fact that there are other e-commerce platforms, I will stick to Amazon because I trust it. So why I trust it? Because I feel that no one is going to cheat me. My data remains within Amazon. My personal information is well kept and secured. So, but then when it comes to data privacy and in generative AI, the game has changed. So last year, or was it in 2022, China passed a law on not guidelines, but on the use of personal data in Gen AI. So they are ahead of us. Now in Singapore today, the Personal Data Privacy Commission has issued guidelines on the recommendations and decision-making using Gen AI. So suddenly data privacy and generative AI has become very topical. So why is data privacy important? Let's start with that first. Kevin?
Yeah, if you think about the fact that when we talk about privacy, we're talking about someone's personal identifiable information, right? And we see that today in privacy-intrusive technologies. But when we talk about AI, when we talk about generative AI, we are now going next level, a higher level where I can now profile you. I can infer private details about you from, for example, a chat conversation. Yeah, I can find out information about you which you never thought it was possible by tracking everything you say, profiling you even better. So that part still applies when it comes to generative AI.
So that's the reason why data protection officers now see that their role has expanded, right? So what else has it expanded to with generative AI? Alvin?
Oh, that's a broad question. And right now, I think if you just look at the first introduction of our own guidelines on AI, which is this one that just happened, right? Yeah. And what did they pick? They picked personal data in recommendation and decision systems. Right. China did that as well. Why? Because this has a big impact. In e-commerce, if you are actually profiling people based on personal data and you have price discrimination, that was one thing that they were wanting to clamp down on, right? Okay, the other thing was also about scheduling of people. That was another thing that people brought up, right? Based on your profile, they schedule, fair or not fair, but depending on what the algorithm decides. So I think for DPOs, explainability and transparency is very important. This was never high up on a DPO kind of job. But with AI, because this thing could be a black box, right? And it's going to be processing personal data, you actually need to be educated what this AI is doing in order to work that into your policies. All right. Previously, your personal data, we're doing this and we're doing marketing. But now you have this AI that's doing more than what your human being is doing. It's doing analysis, collecting, it's doing recommending, making decisions, which is why these two guidelines came up.
Right.
So then the DPO really needs to be able to wheel in terms of what is our system exactly doing, having the backbone to ask that question internally, and then to be able to publicize it. Because like how you trust Amazon, because they're quite transparent about how their things work.
Yeah. So explainability is important, right? Kevin, do you want to expand that a little bit more?
So before AI, we never heard of the word explainability. Yeah. So what is new to the world of privacy is this word called bias, because the systems make recommendations. And as you know, when we talk about machine learning, the algorithm has been trained by data. But the output of that information could be biased, and therefore the decision that's made may be unfair to somebody. And obviously, if you think about the fact that an AI made a decision about you, you didn't get a job, you didn't get to go to university because of the AI algorithm, your next question here is, how come? And let's imagine you applied for a loan, right? And the loan, you got rejected, but it wasn't a human being. You got rejected based on an AI algorithm.
All right.
So the natural reaction that we will have is that, what the hell?
Yeah, I would be angry.
Yeah, so the first thing people want to know is, okay, was there biases? So you're going to hear this word bias quite a bit. So the whole concept of explainability came about because people actually want to know how the AI made a decision about you.
So I want to know the algorithms?
Yes. So let me connect the dots between transparency and explainability.
Okay.
Yeah, when we talk about transparency, you share about what I do, your data and all of that.
Yeah.
So when we talk about explainability, you're talking about the why and the how. So inside, you provide general information on how the AI works. You look at how it makes the decisions. So people want to know. But here's the tough thing, right? It is quite difficult for the developer to tell you how the AI model works because we are actually dealing with neural networks and all of that. But that's another challenge altogether. Right. But the quick answer to your question is you're going to hear the word explainability for the simple reason that people want to know that if it's going to make a decision on me, then I demand to know how the AI algorithm works. So it goes hand in hand with transparency. To summarize, transparency is the what, and the explainability is the why and the how.
So for the DPO, coming from the DPO's perspective, he has to know all of this, right? So when he looks at an application, for example, what is it that he should be looking for? How does he know the explainability and the transparency bit?
So this is the difficult part, right? Because now we're talking about upskilling the DPO. He's got to know about AI, specifically about generative AI. He needs to know how it works. On top of that, he also needs to know about ethical principles, right? And again, you will need to know about biases and how biases are a problem or potential issues. So he finds himself dealing with privacy, security, and biases of the algorithms that could happen and result in potential discrimination or inaccuracy for that matter.
How would startups or small companies embark on this journey of hiring the correct DPO to do this kind of work?
Okay, so startup might not have the luxury to hire the right DPO who is well trained, right? I'll take an example of us, okay? So we are not a big company. We are a typical SME. Our own legal head, right, actively participates in the projects, but he also attends our courses to be trained on AI. Because before that, he then come and spell LLM, right? So then after that, I say, okay, what on earth is this thing? And he was quite skeptical. Say, okay, ChatGPT, nice to play, the thing can just generate some things. As he started to play with it and he showed him some prompts, one day the heavens opened, and say, oh my God, this thing can do this level. Then this when switched on because he actually has another hat, which is the DPO. Right. Together with my DPO, he said, oh my God, right? This thing can do all this thing. Okay. Now he then pays more attention because he said, if we can be taking more AI in, it's very helpful, but there's going to be certain risk because of the hallucinations. Now he starts to understand. So we have a DPO. It's actually, in fact, our DPO office has two persons of different roles. There's an IT one and then there's a legal person. The two of them, Batman Robin, right? Yes. It's a good combination because the understanding of now the legal person, okay, now I need to ask the right question. Can this thing do this? And then is this secure? It's not his place to look at the controls of the security. He needs to ask the right question, but somebody can answer that to assure him, right? Whereas then the IT guy say, okay, the infrastructure should be this, make sure that it's reliable, right? And we can there's always a human in the loop, right? And I can explain to you this algorithm. So again, that's where a startup, you probably want to get a combination of people. It wouldn't be the technical person, right? You still have the technical person doing that. You probably have somebody who's actually knowing how to do policies together with you. Educate the person, which is why we are very passionate about educating people at least on what this thing can do in your business. Then you can explain how you're automating with AI. That's part of the explainability part, right? At least in a rudimentary fashion, you automated it using AI, and this thing can do that. Then you say, okay, now I can be more transparent, right, to put in my policies that, this thing we can do, this thing we have certain guardrails to it. Right. And organically grow them. I think for startups, the danger is that you don't address this. With all the guidelines coming out, the big boys, if you're going to be working with them, and if you're under due diligence, and your AI is not easily understood, it's actually a risk to them, right? So most of them aspire to either get a very big client or get some funding. Both of these entities have due diligence checklists. Right. Some of them, we train them to do so. Right? We have a VC on our class who comes into our class to actually give advice on this thing. And he actually uses those checklists he's gone through a lot of startups who proclaim AI, right? But you say, okay, now he can sift through the guys who are doing real work and the guys who are just wrapping stuff.
Right question.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So if you can't answer it, then you probably can't get a project, right? Because you're seen as not really trustworthy, and you probably can't get the funding. Right.
So in the old world, the DPO is collect, use, disclose, and storing data. In the new world, with the plus AI, you have to do report.
Yeah. So maybe I'll give a perspective. Right. Here, we all know that the data protection law are rules that govern how we collect data, how we use the data, how we disclose or transfer the data, how we store or dispose the data. Right. That's standard for privacy laws. Right. Now, we're going to talk about the data protection officers taking on AI. Right. Yeah. Now that life cycle has expanded. And for anyone who wants to look at what needs to be done, there's a standard called the ISO 38505. That's the governance of data. So if we talk about upskilling, now that life cycle is now expanded to include, as you said, the first part is report. Why? Because you're dealing with an algorithm. The algorithm will you'll be extracting data, right? A lot of them is predictive or there is machine learning. So you have that report. But here's the thing, that is where now you need to decide, because that report's got data. So you're going to make a decision so that you decide on that.
How to use that data, right?
Yes. And that's the part where there's always the danger with biases. It could be discriminatory data. I mean, there could be discrimination. And then you talk about distributing that data. So if you take stock of that, now the life cycle has expanded, right? You need to, again, I summarize for you, report, decide, and distribute. So you add those 3 stages into your life cycle, because the concept is now at every stage of this expanded life cycle, you've got to govern it. There are risks everywhere, and this is where you put your policies and procedures in place.
So to sum up, I think that the role of a DPO has expanded. So for current DPOs, this is a good opportunity to upskill, right? So we are talking about upskilling all the time, right? So this is a good opportunity to upskill and expand into AI. So it's no longer just collecting, using, and disposing. It is also reporting, deciding, and distributing of AI.
Correct. And
of data.
We have to remember that we are moving from data protection, which is the focus is on a compliance objective. We are actually moving towards data governance, which is focused on the business or the digital transformation objectives. And this is an area where DPOs should move towards, because the AI laws, all the policy frameworks are focusing a lot on data governance, which is why I share with everyone that we should be looking at the ISO 38505. I think the previous episode we also mentioned that there is a AI management framework called the 42001. So you're not starting from scratch, right? There are best practice, there are industry frameworks that DPOs can use, including IMDA's Model AI Governance Framework.
So this is a good time to end this podcast, but I would say to DPOs, take the opportunity and upskill. Thank you. We'll see you for the next episode.